So how are you and the family, Blake? You're all settling in, mate?
Yeah, all good. Obviously, been here for a while now, so pretty used to the UK.
Yeah. Sorry about the weather, mate.
That's the main one. I think if you struggle with the cold, it's probably not the country for you. So we're okay. We don't mind it. Obviously, the winters, the sun's not out for very long, but as I said, you get used to it.
Yeah, like you said, it's a good job, mate. Otherwise, it's tough going, isn't it?
Yeah.
So before we get stuck into your rugby story, mate, where was home for you as a kid, and who lived that one with you?
From Mount Druitt, yeah. So obviously an area that's become a bit more popular these days. We've had a few success stories coming out of there lately, and when I was coming through, you weren't too proud to say you were from there. It was something you sort of kept on the down low. But I think a group of athletes and artists are coming out now and making it a really cool place to come from.
So you've set the tone, mate, and they've jumped on the back of it.
Oh, there's been a lot. There's been a lot of rugby players come out of Western Sydney. It's the heartland of rugby league. It's you live and breathe it there. I think when you're from there, you think sport's the only way out, and in particular rugby league. But I suppose a few people from there now are sort of showing the kids there that there's other avenues you can take as well. But rugby league's huge, yeah.
Right, mate. So how was you introduced to the game, and where was your junior club?
Mum and Dad loved the sport. Dad played, obviously not just at an amateur level, but loved the game. Probably didn't have the parental guidance he probably needed to go any further, but loved the sport. Mum come from, her parents loved the sport as well. They're big Parramatta Eels fans, and my grandmother's actually, she was the tragic. She loved Parramatta and supported the game, and so yeah, it was just a natural thing really. All my uncles and that played, and then Mum and Dad took me down. Dad was always my coach, and just loved it.
How was it having your dad as a coach, mate? Was it going?
I love him for everything he done. I look back now and I'm probably a bit embarrassed the way I probably treated him. I used to hate it. We used to clash a bit. Right. We used to drive home from training and Mum would get in the car and go, right, what's gone on tonight? And as I said, I look back now and I'm pretty embarrassed the way I used to carry on, but that's the way it is.
Yeah, you live and learn, mate. Hindsight, innit? Hindsight. We think we know best as kids.
I've got a son too, so. But I wouldn't like to coach him, especially playing professionally as well. It's little bit of an extra pressure on him, but I wouldn't like to be his coach.
No, that's fair enough, mate. So, what other sports growing up were you into, or was it just always going to be rugby for you, Blake?
I was a pretty gifted athletically as a kid. I was a state sprinter, and my general gross motor and that kind of stuff was pretty good. So little athletics in Australia, every child sort of starts in little athletics. You sort of start that from 4, and that's you go weekly to and you do like 4 or 5 events a night, and then on the following Friday you do the other 4 or 5 events that you didn't do the week before. And that's, as I said, that's sort of a rite of passage for Australian kids. It's where everyone starts, and it's where you get all your general athleticism from. So I love that. I spent the first probably 10, 12 years of my life wanting to be an Olympian. I lived and breathed athletics and rugby. Obviously, they sort of come hand in hand. The speed I'd get from athletics would help me on the footy field and vice versa. So, but I genuinely loved it. Long jump was probably my best event. Right. I could throw a discus as well for a skinny little white kid, but I really enjoyed that. I played a bit of baseball as well.
Right.
Cricket's huge in Australia. Baseball, not so much, but I got introduced to baseball and I really loved that. Started getting picked in a couple of like rep sides, but baseball for me was always only something to fill my summers while I was waiting to play rugby and do athletics again. But yeah, I was decent at that. We played touch footy. Touch football is pretty big in Australia.
Yeah.
But yeah, I owe a lot to my parents. They got me around to a lot of different sports, whether it was athletics or sprint training through the week, or baseball or touch, or So we're pretty busy. Yeah.
Yeah, never still, mate. So without knowing it, Blake, do you reckon you'd have took a little bit to traits from every one of them sports to combine into being the player you've become and you were growing into?
Yeah, it was a funny one. As I said, I was pretty gifted, sort of, and I was pretty quick. I sort of joke with my parents and say my career peaked when I was 11 years old. I was pretty well known where I was from, and I was a handy rugby player, and everyone knew sort of how quick I was. And I sort of lost my speed over a couple of years there. There's a couple of reasons for that, but I went from being sort of the fastest kid to like a big gangly thing that couldn't run without a limp. I think a long story short, I chipped a little bone in my knee. Right. And when you're young, you only go see general local doctors. And I went and seen one, and she told me I'd be fine. And I limped for 2 years of my life, and I just couldn't shake it. And everyone used to say, "Why are you limping? What's going on?" But I just couldn't get rid of this limp. And then 2.5 years down the track, I found out that I still had a bone fragment in my knee that hadn't healed. So that explained that. And once I managed to get through that, I started slowly getting a bit of speed back. I got a bit taller than what some probably thought I would, and here I am, I guess.
Yeah, because when I went to Sydney for not for the grand final, but I watched the 2015 grand final, and we stayed in I don't know if I pronounced it right, was it Woolloomooloo?
Woolloomooloo, yeah.
Yeah. So I stayed from there, went to into the city. And as you're going around that main road to the right, that field, touch was everywhere. You're probably you're probably seeing it here now. It's soccer, you guys might call it, but football's really that there, isn't it?
I think you look at the women's game, and I think that's the biggest reason why Australia and New Zealand are so far ahead. It's because them girls, they grow up playing touch football their whole life, so they've got all the skills required. I think. Over here, it's girls can play rugby, but it's not really much else. So I think that's the difference in athleticism and in skill. These girls have grown up with a ball in their hands their whole lives.
I was going to say, come out the womb holding a ball, basically, didn't they?
And then, as you said, football's the same here. That's what Western's like. I try and explain when you go to a kids rugby match in Western Sydney, it's like watching kids football matches here. Like there's desperations in the parents' voices on the sideline for the kids to go on and make it, I suppose. Football's a pipe dream here because you can earn some really good money, but in Australia, that's our version, you know what I mean? To be an NRL player, that's how you can go on and make some really good money and enjoy yourself playing sports. So, it's a religion out there for sure. Yeah.
So how was it growing up with people knowing who you was, Blake, and sort of would you have said they had an expectation on you as a young lad anyway, because you were well known?
No, not really. I loved rugby, and I happened to be quite good at it. I wore a blue headgear, which made me stand out a little bit. And every country we'd go to, they'd say the kid with the blue headgear's here. But I really enjoyed that. I mean, as I said, that was really young. That was about under 11s, under 12s. But in Australia, there are a few little rep teams you can make at that age that sort of put you on that path. And I was lucky enough to make a couple of those. And then I sort of hovered, and my not career because you're only 12, 13, but it didn't keep sort of going on the same trajectory for a few reasons.
Right, mate. So what were you like in a new environment? And so when you said you got selection for them smaller rep teams at a younger age, what was the selection process for them, mate?
One thing I try to explain to English people is there's a lot more things you can achieve in school rugby league. I got picked in a New South Wales under 11s team. That's from school. So you go on, you play in 3 or 4 different rep teams before you can get the chance to play for New South Wales. But like my son, he's 11 now, and that's I feel sad that he's not back home experienced, because he's at the age where he would have been experienced, and it would have been really cool to see him on that journey now as well. But I think that's another one of the reasons, the gap, although it's closing, the gap between Australia and England is how big the programs are in schools. Like I tell the boys that in Australia, you pick your high school based on the rugby league program, and you don't go to the school unless 1, it's a sports school, or 2, they've got a really good rugby league program. So you can do a lot in school. So I think that's huge, and it makes you enjoy school a bit more, because you got a rugby match at the end of the week and things like that. And then further down the track, under 18s, like we send an Australian schoolboys team over to versus the England academies team. So Ours is picked, you've got to be in school to make that team. So it incentivizes you to stay in school the whole way through until you're 18, because you want to pull on an Australian jersey, an Australian schoolboys jersey.
Yeah, like a nice incentive for you.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So is there no like under 11s rep teams for your lad to try out for? No, like leagues.
Oh, really? No. Like he's playing in games where there are different rules every week, and sometimes I let you know and we'll give the ball back to you, and sometimes if you run out, we'll let you come back in. Like it's all fun, but it is a bit hard for him as well, because he sort of understands what's going on, and he's like, just play some normal rugby. But he's gone into the 12s. He's gone into the 12s this year, and I think it gets a little bit more serious.
Yeah, right, mate. So going back to you, how was club rugby compared to school rugby then, if school tended to be the better pathway for success?
Well, you were versing all the same guys essentially, because the kids that were at all the local schools that you're versing on a Friday, they're also in teams on a Saturday. So you get a pretty good understanding of the better kids. And but for a comp, the Penrith district, like it's crazy. Like it's unbelievable. Some of the clubs have 2 teams, but both teams will be in the first, like in the highest division, and they'll be versing
just as good as each other.
Yeah, they've got 30 kids that are better than a lot of kids at other clubs. But it is a religion, and it is full on, and it is why a lot of kids out of Western Sydney do go on to make it.
Yeah,
a lot of Pacific Islander boys too. So we've grown up used to our smaller white kids dealing with some pretty big boys and dealing with them on a weekly basis.
Yeah, sorry, I was just going to touch on that. So I had Rangi's been on, Rangi Chase. He said like the island kids or the Polynesian and that, say they get picked up through school, they're put in housing. So say an Aussie kid was from out of Sydney, would they be put in housing as well if he was selected? Or
yeah, for sure. So they're country kids. They're always big tough white kids from out in the country that get brought down and aligned with NRL clubs as well. So there's opportunities for everyone in Australia. It's pretty hard to get missed. If you're a decent rugby player, you're gonna get picked up somewhere.
Yeah, I guess that's nice to know though, mate, isn't it, when you're growing up there?
Yeah, definitely. And once again, the school system as well. Like if you missed on the weekend, there's always a chance in school, and there's always a rep team you can put your name forward for and put your name sort of under lights. Yeah.
And how was you in a new environment, mate? Was you someone that was quite open to it and you'd fit in nicely, or? Yeah.
I pride myself on getting along with everyone, I guess, and being involved in team sports my whole life. I think it's something that I've learned to be pretty good at, and it's something that all kids should really deal with growing up, because it's being a part of a team and getting along with different personalities is a very important life skill.
Yeah, that's it, mate. The attributes on and off the field that are needed, aren't they?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So when did clubs begin to take a note of you and be interested in signing you, Blake? And how does that process work?
Because I was in the Penrith comp, basically I knew that more than likely my chance was going to come with the Penrith Panthers.
Okay.
And what happens is they start picking development squads at under 12s. Now, the under 12s development squad, it won't consist of much. You'll get invited to 2 or 3 training sessions. And if you're lucky, they might organise 1 or 2 just sort of friendly style matches against some other clubs' development squads. But so that'll go from like under 12s to under 15s, where it's not too serious. But basically, I think the system's set up so that the Penrith Panthers can tell the other clubs, listen, we've identified this kid, he's in our development squad, and basically keep your hands off him, and you've got to pay us a fee. And if you wanted to take him over, so 12s to 15s, it's, as I said, it's you're just getting put in the system. You're doing very minimal training, and you're getting a game here or there. They might give you a Panthers training shirt, so you think you're pretty cool.
Yeah, I was going to say you made up. Yeah.
And then under 16s is when it gets a bit more serious. Under 16, we call that Harold Matthews. That's Harold Matthews and SG Ball. So that's 16s and 18s. They're the 2 sort of prestigious competitions that you want to be involved in.
Yeah.
So I was in all the development squads up until Harold Matts, and then got selected in the Harold Matthews squad. Then it went back to under 17s development after that, and then SG Ball. So although I was picked in all the development squads right the way through, I wasn't the star all the way through, if that made sense.
Yeah.
During that time, there was kids from the country getting brought in my position, getting brought in and getting paid. And, you know, I was a local kid, so I was watching them coming in, and you think you're sort of on the outer and stuff like that. But
do you reckon they rely on the fact that you're a local kid work?
I think that the local kids don't get treated as well. When I say get treated as well, I think they know that they've got them, and
if they want them, they're there, sort of.
They can just stockpile them and do what they want with them when they're ready to use them, I suppose. Whereas the kids that are getting brought in from out of area, they're obviously going to get prioritised, and some of them are even earning money at them young ages.
Right, mate. So has standoff always been your forte?
It always has been, yeah. But as you mentioned, like I made the Harold Matthews squad, and what they used to do at Panthers for the under-16s was they'd pick 4. If you were a hooker in the local comp, you were not as great a chance to play hooker for the Harold Matthews squad, because what they used to do, they used to pick 4 halves and turn 2 of them into hookers. Okay. And I was one of the ones that got turned into a hooker. So obviously I wasn't too happy about that, but it is what it is. I was probably 6 foot by that stage, and I was 70 kilos. So I was a string bean bloody rate. But so I was a hooker then, and then I filled out a little bit. So then under 18s, I was a 13.
Yeah.
And I played a bit of centre in between. Like no one could really commit to what my position was going to be. Everyone I asked, they said they weren't quite sure. I was a kid of decent height, and no one sort of knew how big I was going to fill out. So probably until I went to the West Tigers, West Tigers was the first time I'd actually told myself I'm gonna be a 6, and I'm not gonna listen to anyone else. Like it's my decision, because up until then I'd probably let it get in my head a bit. I'm quite versatile. I really enjoy playing like a versatile role, but there comes a point where you've got to try and settle. And for me,
you've got to be selfish, haven't you, mate? Yeah, of course.
Yeah. The thing I struggle with, like I had to be heavy enough one week to play in the back row if needed, and then I had to be nimble and sharp enough to play 6. Like I just struggled, and it wasn't until as I said, I made the decision myself to say I'm going to get my body in a position where I'm going to be a 6, and then whatever happens after that, that's up to them, I guess.
Yeah. So has your style always been pretty much the same, mate? Because you mentioned the position there, and I was thinking about I'd personally liked, because you go at the line, I think you would do well here. Don't get me wrong, you're smashing it in the halves, but if the chance come, I think you'd be an ideal 13. Because
there's more money in the house.
no, you're right though. But do you know, like,
no, but yeah, definitely.
It sounds daft, like, but the way you return the ball, like your back 3 do, if that makes sense. You return the ball with interest, like you put your hand up for them tough carries. Not many 6s will do that, will they?
Yeah, no, I could play it with a pinch, and I have no doubt about that. I joke with the boys at Leeds and say that, the last few years of my career, I'll be a 13 when my legs slow up a bit on me, and I'm with that tough guy in the middle. I'm willing to do that. And, I do base my game on that kind of stuff. But it's a difficult one, isn't it? Like, I'm not getting any younger, so I mean, time will tell. But while I'm playing 6 and the coach is happy enough with that, I suppose it's more enjoyable for me. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I don't doubt that, mate. I just, like I said, I just think you've got them attributes where probably your versatility shows that, because you've done a little bit, which we'll touch on for Great Britain, didn't you, when you toured with us and stuff, and if you're happy to talk about it. But yeah, no, sorry, mate. I was just thought, like, that's how I'd want my 13 to play like you play.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't have to be a big brawler and smasher, but also you don't just want your 13 to be a middle pivot. He needs to do it all, doesn't he?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yep.
So when the decision come to leave Penrith, mate, was it a mutual thing, or did you very much back yourself to play 6 and you had to look for the move?
I reckon I was pretty young and naive, and probably didn't work as hard as I probably thought I needed to. I had a couple of injuries that didn't help, but basically the way I structured my contract was I was going to have a big year, and I was going to stay the following year. And if I was going to stay, the club would have to pay me a certain amount of money. And the way the year panned out, I had an injury and didn't play my best when I got my chances. So they were never going to pay me the money that they had to if I was going to stay. So it it come to the point where it was looking pretty obvious that I was going to have to leave. And I must have been about 21 or 22. 21 or 22 at the time. And I just thought, you know what, like clubs will come lining up and I'll make a move, and how exciting, I get to go to another team. And when it come time to find a new contract, I was fucking struggling, man. I didn't have many offers, and you know, at 21 years old and you're not receiving many offers, you're thinking
scary.
Could be over as quick as it started. And thankfully, I had a good back end of the year with the New South Wales Cup team. We lost the grand final that year, but I had a good finish to the year and sort of come on Mick Potter's radar at the Tigers. And went over there for a hell of a lot less money, but probably spent 6 to 8 months training harder than I ever have before in my life. I went there, you know, in the shape of my career, and impressed in pre-season. And Brayford Astor was due to play 6 that year, and you know, I knew he was getting towards the back end of his career, probably similar to what we just discussed about playing 5'8" and playing 13. And you know, I knew that I could force my way in there, and as it panned out, I had a pretty good season with them and managed to play, I think, 19 or 20 games in the year, which was a lot more than what some at the club thought I would. And probably turned out to be a real defining year for me, really, for sure.
So just a couple of things there, mate. So you've probably learned an early lesson that some blokes that play NRL don't learn at all, isn't it? Like the graft, the work rate, and like, because a lot of players test the open market, as they call it now, don't they?
Yeah.
And secondly, mate, was although you'd agreed that contract with Penrith, was you not able to alter it?
It wasn't discussed, really. It wasn't discussed. Right. It was more that this is what you asked for, and you haven't really delivered what you sort of said you could, and that was it, sort of thing. So, but that's sport. That was a lesson in itself. That, you know, it's all good and well to do what you want to do with your contract, but if you're not going to back it up and really deliver, then you'll have an egg on your face pretty quick, I suppose. So, but I don't think my career goes where it does if I don't have that moment. I think, as I said, I train my backside off. I've never trained harder in my life, and hence, you know, I had a good few years after that.
So you mentioned there's a little bit of a quiet response to being probably not a new free agent, would we call it? And what goes through your mind when clubs do show an interest? Are you just more than money and where it is, you just after that opportunity, Blake? And
I was at that point where it didn't matter. It didn't matter what I was doing. It didn't matter who it was going to be. I knew that if I got myself in the shape I needed to, that, you know, I was going to impress, and you know, that's what I managed to do. Yeah.
So when you walk into that new dressing room, and you mentioned in Braith and mixed culture at the time, what's going through you? What goes through your head when you walk into a dressing room with seasoned professionals, aren't they? And they've been there and done it, sort of thing. Yeah,
it's hard. I think I've always done, you know, if you look back over my career, I think I've always done my best stuff when I've sort of been backed into a corner. I think rugby environments are easy. Everyone's there to do the same thing. Yeah. Whether you're the top line player or the bottom line player, everyone knows the formula of how to be successful. It's just a matter of who's doing it and who's not. And you can't be begrudged if you're there working your backside off every day. And if anyone is begrudging you, it's because they're threatened, I guess. But that was a great environment. There was no, like, Braith had already done a lot in his career by that point, so there was no hard feelings from him that a young kid was coming to the club to try and work hard and play 5'8". But it was a good environment. It was a club that was sort of just it tasted its success. It was sort of the Robbie Farah, the Benji Marshall era, and sort of it was just on the back end of that. So it was a strange time to come in. Robbie Farah went through a lot that year that I was there. I think he had a run-in with Gordon Tallis over the radio, and the media was coming for Robbie's head everywhere. But I was just there to, you know, train hard and take any opportunity I was given, and I feel like I was able to do that.
Do you know when because what English fans won't get is, as much as we say, oh, we know it's the big sport, the press are on them, they're literally on you. Like, you're on every channel, every minute of the day, aren't you?
We've got a 24/7 rugby league channel. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you know what too? But I didn't really understand it until I went to the Tigers. The Tigers is it's a big Sydney-based club. You can't go anywhere in Australia without seeing a Tigers fan. There just seems to be Tigers fans everywhere, and for whatever reason, the media just love talking about the West Tigers. Obviously, they haven't improved much since then, but yeah, they're really heavily involved in the media cycle in Sydney, being one of the big premier Sydney clubs.
Yeah, and when the attention's on players or ex-players like Robbie Farrer and Benji and Braith, does that allow you to do your stuff under the radar, mate, and start expressing yourself and be recognised for the good you're doing rather than what the club's doing?
Yeah, for sure. And as I said, nothing was going to bother me that year because I was a kid that had just been thrown out of his last club and really looking to. It's hard because you know what you're capable of, but no one else really knows it until they see it. So you just trying your best to let everyone see what you know you've sort of had your whole life. I guess it's a strange feeling, yeah. And
did you play a little bit of reserve? Is it Balmain? Was it you played a little bit of?
I played the first 3 or 4 games there, and then I got my chance, and I think I stayed in grade the rest of the year. So as I said, I had a clause in my contract that year that I think if I played 17 games, my contract the following year jumped right up, and I managed to play the required games after a good season. And as it turned out, I didn't get to benefit from that contract upgrade because I left after 1 year and went to Canberra.
Yeah. So just before we talk about that move, Blake, did that year reaffirm to you, as much as you know you're a good player, that you can cope at that level? Because it is.
Yeah, I think
as much as we're on about the gap between the countries, that level is it's a tough game every week, isn't it? You'll notice it. There's the odd blowout here and there.
It's hard. I think that just quickly touching on the difference, like everyone, it's the main question you get is what is the difference? And the only real difference is the strength in depth.
Yeah.
And when I say strength in depth, I mean like strength in athletes in depth. Like you've got some clubs here that, for the first 10 rounds, they'll compete with anyone else in the Super League. But as you get to around 18, 19, 20, and we know the fixtures come around thick and fast here, I think, you've got players playing in Super League jerseys that, probably aren't quite up to it, to be honest. But the injury tolls and the way the squads are, that's just the way and what clubs have to do. It's great for them guys to get a chance, don't get me wrong, but it's the strength in depth, and it's the strength, like you've got 30 guys in the NRL that are full-time. Rugby's their job. So at a bare minimum, they're going to be an athlete. So come sort of July, August, when you have to call upon them, at least physically, and they're in tip-top shape and they're ready to go. So that's the only difference. I think every team could pick 13 players or 17 players for 1 week and go and compete with an NRL side. I have no doubt about that, because rugby's rugby, and once you're on the
principles
field,
are all the same. Yeah.
So, but when you start getting too deep in your squads over here, I think that's when the quality really drops off.
Yeah. Did rugby union never sniff around, or would you have just batted that way anyway?
It wasn't. Do you know what? Rugby union is not. It's not highly participated as kids in Australia, and the kids that do play is, they're rich private school kids, and they're just not as good. I think if rugby could learn one thing in Australia, it'd be trying to get more of a foothold in these rugby league heartlands, and because the kids are going, no doubt about that. The kids, you get offered a private school scholarship from out west, your parents aren't turning that down. Not a 20, 30 a year school. Of course they're going to go, but
that's it.
They're just it's just a different game, and the skill level's so different. Yeah,
isn't it mad how we're so far away from each other, but that genre of sport tends to have the same class issues, don't they?
Yeah, it's very odd, and I think that's why New Zealand do well, because they're the number one sport there. So but New Zealand also take on the rough and tumble kids, whereas most other countries it's the posh kids that play the sport, I guess.
That thrive in rugby union.
Yeah.
No, that's fair enough. So when the Canberra move comes around, why Canberra and why the move? How did that come about?
Well, as I said, I had a year left on my contract at Tigers.
Yeah.
When you say why Canberra, like unless unless someone really, really wants you right or wrong, you're not leaving, are you? Because you've got a year left. So
yeah,
you're not really on many clubs' radars because the list comes out, and if your name's not on it as off contract, unless a club really wants you to break your current contract to get you out, it's not going to happen. And as it turned out, when I was playing for Tigers, we versed Canberra a couple of times. I had the game of my life, to be honest. I think the third last round we played them down there, and I don't remember too many better games I've played. And I was playing 6 as well. And I just remember Ricky calling and saying we need a number 6, and we want to break your contract and we want you here to be our number 6. And that's the first time at NRL level anyone had called and said, we think you're an NRL 6 and we want you to be our 6. So straight away, that's music to your ears. And although it's not the most ideal situation looking to break your contract, it was, if I could get it done, I felt it was going to be awesome for me in that stage of my career. So really excited. And speaking to Ricky Stewart on the phone, it's pretty enjoyable when he first come calling, and it all happened pretty quick actually, and quite exciting.
So what are them chats like? Because you're still a young fella at this point, and you're going in effectively asking for the release break, aren't you?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So at first the Tigers said, listen, that's a great opportunity for him. We won't send his way.
Okay.
But as time went on, I've received Members Player of the Year that year. Like I did have a pretty decent year with the Tigers. The fans loved me, and I had a crack every game I played, and I did play quite well. And I won Members Player of the Year. So as it slowly dragged on, I think it got leaked to the media that I was looking to get the release, and that was at a time when the Tigers, historically that time, the Tigers were letting players go that the fans still can't handle.
Yeah.
James Tedesco was a local junior. Mitchell Moses was there at that time as well. Aaron Woods, they end up letting go. So the club copped a lot of flack over a few years that that we could have still had these players on our books. And while I wasn't quite on those three's level, I was another name to add to the list. And once they found out they were going to let me go, so then they went back on their word and said, we're not going to let you go, you're going to stay. And anyway, long story short, they changed their mind 3 or 4 times, and in the end they finally said we'll let you go, good luck, and go on your way.
Doesn't sound ideal for you that either, though. You don't know whether you're coming or going at one point.
What too, I think they changed coaches in between, didn't they? So right. I was Mick Potter, and so they changed their mind a few times, and then Jason Taylor was coming in as the new coach, and he, to be fair, he didn't even ask to meet with me or chat with me or find out why I was leaving or anything. I think he just come in and said, yeah, he can go. He's not someone sort of part of my plans, so I'm happy to sign it off. And then, so once he got the job, I think I was okay to leave. Yeah.
It's a bit mad not even testing the water with you.
I would have thought
that's
so.
How it works,
I would have thought so.
Yeah.
But that's how it is. And,
you've learned early that it's more than sport; it's a business. I think you really made.
100%. Yeah, definitely. And they'll throw you as quick as you'll throw.
Of course they will. Yeah.
That's the sad reality of it.
Us fans don't understand that sometimes, do we?
Well, you guys are the innocent party in all of that. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
The club does what's best for them. We do what's best for us, and you guys have just got to sit back and sort of be at the mercy, I guess. So
wait for it to happen, rather than all the ins and outs.
For sure, yeah.
Yeah. So I've just looked at what I put down. So the Canberra spell didn't go too bad, mate, did it?
Yeah, well, to be honest, it was a big move at the time. We must have had 2 kids by then, I reckon.
Right.
I don't know if you know the map of Australia, but Canberra's 3 hours away from where we're from.
Yeah.
We were 23, 2 kids, about to essentially move away from both our mum and dads.
Yeah, it's a big move.
All our support network, so it was a big move, but as you said, one that I've made my career off a couple of really good years with the Raiders, and I'm forever grateful for my time down there for sure.
What are the biggest standout memories, mate, from the Raiders?
Just the first one was getting the phone call and saying, we want you to be our 5'8". Like that, it honestly was huge. So
did it justify everything that for your players?
Well, as I said, someone saw what I knew I had. So that was the first thing. This was the first time I was going to a club. I wasn't really although I told the media that I was coming there to earn my like I'd already been told that I was the sixth kind of thing. So
yeah,
that's the first time that happened. And then my first year there was just, it felt like my team. It was like, let's put Blake in positions where Blake can do what Blake does. And the roller coaster I went on that year, yeah, it was pretty crazy. I got picked in the city country team too. I scored a hat trick in that game.
Did you? So do you get to keep the ball or outright? I don't like to do
no, we don't.
Soccer here. No,
it's not like soccer.
I don't think so anywhere.
That was my first taste of rep footy.
Yeah.
You know, when I went there like it was a genuine trial for the state of origin, and probably, to be honest, probably deserved the crack that year. It wasn't meant to be, but unfortunately, I come through an era where Laurie Daly was the coach, and he picked the same 17 guys every year for 7 years and watched them lose every year. So don't know if I could have made a difference, but it would have been great to get a crack on that arena.
Yeah, you wonder how that. Obviously, I'm not an experienced coach at that level, but you know yourself, if you're at a club level, if your 17's going to keep producing them results, mate, regardless of the performance, you have to tinker somewhere, don't you? And it tends to be the halves to begin with, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah. And as it went, the year that they broke the drought was the year that he went with the two most inexperienced half that he picked in the whole time. You know what I mean? But that's sport. That 15 was still a massive year for me. I got presented with a Dally M 5'8" of the Year trophy at the end of it, and for me, that was the moment. I probably won't have another moment like that in my career. I guess only a Man of Steel or a Dally M could probably top it. But I posted the photo the other week. They put the Dally M Team of the Year up that year. Actually, no, they showed all the 5'8s that had won it over the last 10 years. And
they did have seen it. There's a lad that puts is it Clarkie's column?
Yeah.
I like his little roundup in that. He's quite good what he does.
He's very good, yeah. But seeing some of the faces in there, like first in one of a few times, and Maloney's, so my name will be written in some form of history. I try and tell all my teammates that no one's going to give a fuck about us in 50 years. But,
I wouldn't be quite sure about that, mate. You do leave your mark, don't you? And
but
you put yourself through.
In all honesty, there's one or two, if you're lucky, from every generation that'll get talked about in 100 years. And I'm not naive enough to know that I'm not going to be one of them. But hopefully, there's someone out there saying that that bloke on his day was a pretty handy rugby player. So
More at 6 and 13.
I'll take that for sure.
Yeah. Right. So that year when you are winning them trophies, you're playing city country. Is the aim, because obviously later on we'll talk about it a little bit, but is Australia always the ultimate aim? I've always had whether people believe this or not, I always told myself that England was going to be a shout for me as well. I always knew it was, and my grandmother meant so much to me. I'm not going to lie. If I got picked for Origin in Australia before England, of course that's the route I would have took. Anyone that knows rugby knows.
But I certainly had a desire to represent England for a lot longer than what people would believe. But definitely I would have played Origin and Australia for sure.
So just not. I don't want to be too nosy, but how do you declare your eligibility for countries, mate?
I did this the other day actually. When you sign your first deal, there's a form you fill out. So you've got to fill out your nationalities back to your grandparents. So someone did ask me that the other day. Might have been the missus. Because we were talking about my son. My son, he'll be eligible for 4 different nations. Like it's
that's not bad going though, is it?
His mum's Samoan, but she's born in New Zealand. I'm Australian, and then by the time we leave here, he'll be probably an English citizen, so he'll have a few choices.
No, hopefully though, mate, isn't it? It's all you can want the best for him, isn't it? Another daft one really is, mate, what are you like for keeping your stash or your memorabilia? Do you keep a jersey or a programme?
Yeah, I've got a backlog of about 30 jerseys I want framed I've only ever framed one so far, and that was my debut Panthers jersey.
Right.
A bit of a funny story of that one, actually. We there's a store in the shopping mall in Australia. It's called Legend of League, and they sell all rugby league memorabilia.
Right.
But you can actually take your jerseys in, and they'll send it off to their framers, and they'll frame it for you.
Yeah.
So I've taken my jersey and I've taken it up to the counter. I said I want to get this framed, and the playing jerseys have the slightly different jerseys. They have all the rubber stuff on the stomach, and so I've handed it over, and she said, "Oh, this is a playing one. Where have you got this from?" And I said, I made my debut a couple of weeks ago. I want to get it framed for my mum. And then they said, "No worries, we'll send it off." This was on like a Wednesday. They said, "We'll give you a call Friday, and we'll let you know when it'll be ready." And Friday comes, and we haven't heard anything. And I thought, we'll be going into that shopping centre in the next week or so. So we'll just check when we go in next week. So the following Tuesday, we're walking through the store. And I walk past the store and I look in the store, and the young girl working there, she's wearing my jersey around the store, serving customers. But it should have been framed by now. So in my head, I'm like, fuck, I don't want to tell the missus because she'll blow up. So I've ended up going, "Babe, I think that girl back there was wearing my jersey." So she storms back to the store. As she comes in the store, the girl, she sees her and runs out the back and locks herself in the storeroom because she was that scared. So then there's up at the counter saying, "What's going on?" They said, "Oh, sorry, the girl's in the back crying, like she's not coming out. We're really sorry and embarrassed, but we'll make sure it gets sent off today to get framed." But yeah, it was fucking pretty funny.
No, it is funny. It's not like you don't hear that, do you?
She wouldn't come back out, the poor girl. Yeah, she was
I won't lie, mate. I was waiting for you to say that they'd framed the replica and she kept it.
Nah, fuck.
Yeah.
But I've got a pretty big backlog, yeah. Hopefully, I mean, I don't know if every play's the same, but you picture your pool room when you're done, and you'd love to have as many jerseys as you can up on the wall. I said to one of the guys at our club, the thing I find strange is that we don't get team photos. Like, when you're kids, you get a team photo every year.
I thought you did, no.
You don't actually get a team photo. Like, it's weird. Like, I think it'd be cool to have every team photo on your wall after, but you don't get one, no. It's pretty bizarre, actually. Yeah.
But you do in Australia, though, yeah?
No, not. No. I don't think so. You think they just frame it? You take a photo every year.
Yeah.
I don't know what the club does with it. Yeah, we don't get one.
Right. I'd just presumed you would have myself, mate. It's just
got one from Panthers once. Yeah. I've got a cool one, actually. They framed it and everyone signed it and that. But other than that, I haven't got one. I'm weird.
We probably want you going to the club shop and have to pay for it, mate. So, yeah, you talk about them trophies and the people you built, like you meet on the way and the relationships you build. And it's a question I was going to ask you later, but as much as you move, every move's incentivized by success, isn't it? You want to win trophies. And I'll talk more about you couldn't move to Leeds later on, but is Aidan a part of that? Because you had something good going at Canberra, didn't you? You just complemented each other really well. Yeah,
we grew up knowing of each other, me and Aidan, and truth be told, we didn't hate each other, but we had a pretty healthy rivalry coming through the grades. He was always a 5'8", I was always a 5'8", and he probably done a little better than me, sort of in them, sort of 16 to 20 them years, sort of thing. He was making a few rep teams that I was missing out on, things like that. So when he come to Canberra, I wasn't sure how we were going to get on, but I'd consider him one of my closest mates now. We've we had 2 really good years at Canberra, but then we had sort of a year and a half of some times that got pretty tough. He was the same as me. He was down in Canberra, away from all of his support network, and as were we. So we enjoyed the good times and lent on each other in the tougher times as well. So it was really when the opportunity come up to link back up this year was certainly something I wanted to do. Yeah.
So when you're out on your own sort of thing in Canberra, which is because you're, like you said, you're that far away, is that where the team environment really thrives? Because you still have to rely on each other for them, not only the good times, but things happening, family life. You shut the front door, no one knows what goes on, Blake, do they? So that's when you have to rely on each other. And I think that showed on the field a few times for you, didn't it? Because
I reckon I haven't experienced a better team culture than the Raiders. I think something that, like, I don't know if you know also, but Canberra's the butt of everyone's jokes in Australia. It's like, oh, as if you'd live in Canberra. Like it's the end of the world. It's no one wants to live there. You mention you live in Canberra and you're like, oh, what do you, because it's in the middle of, it's surrounded by land. So there's no beaches, and it's the coldest part of Australia. So as I said, everyone gives you a hard time. So I think that galvanizes you a little bit because everyone's like, yeah, fuck everyone else. They can say what they want, but we enjoy living here. And but not only that, like it doesn't have a huge junior league. So most of the players are like me. They come from Queensland, or they've come from New Zealand, or they've come from the country. So we do all rely on each other quite heavily. And that was certainly the best team culture that I've had. And hence why it was, 4 of the best years of, not just mine, but our family's life as well. There was a lot of players with young kids. We're sort of, a lot of us on that sort of in that same
cycle of life,
same level of life. Yeah. So it was a really enjoyable time.
Yeah. So on the field, mate, was there ever a game where you just felt it was your night, or was there times in games where you just thought you just couldn't get beat and everything was going right for you? Does any of them moments stand out? Any particular games where you just felt unplayable at times?
I'd missed, like, they named the Origin squad, and I missed. Obviously, I wasn't selected in that, but I was half keeping an eye on it, thinking I was half a chance, and so missed out on that. And then we played 2 days later, and I think I scored a hat trick in like 13 minutes against the Knights, but it was like a genuine hat trick, 3 back-to-back tries. And it's a strange one when something like that happens, because you're 14 minutes into the game and you're thinking, fuck, it can only go downhill from here. I think I'm ready to get off, but no, we end up having a really good win, and that's one of the nights that springs to mind, about just a night where everything comes together and really works for you.
Did he ever reach out, Blake, if you're in the plans or in and around, like a training squad?
They do for some. I was in the emerging blue squad at the start of the year. They pick a 30 or 35-man squad, but I think they just thought I was a bit too inexperienced and wasn't ready for that level. But I guess you don't know until you're thrown in there, do you?
That's exactly what I was going to say. Unless someone's going to give you an opportunity, mate, you can't disprove or prove them right, can you?
Yeah, that's right.
So did he ever give you a call and say you're not far away? But
not really. Not really, nah.
Right. I think again, as fans, we glorify it as if it must all be done proper, if that makes sense. Like,
well, it is for far away. Yeah, for sure.
Right. Faces and horses for courses and stuff like that, mate. Yeah. No, that's fair enough. So, did you put the feelers out in the UK to come over here, or was it a surprise?
I was. At the time, I was ready to leave Canberra. I think the way I am, I think I thrive on new challenges. I think most of my moves have always started really well. So I knew that it was time to leave, and I turned down a really good offer from the Raiders. They offered me a 2-year extension to stay. And people find this hard to believe, but I said, listen, I can't sign it. Like, I can't take your money because I'm not happy here at the moment, and I want something new. And I said to the missus that I'm going to turn this down, and I'm not going to get offered anywhere near this at another club, because I was worth more to the Raiders than I was to another club. I think the market at the time, most teams are pretty settled for halves. And as I said, so I knew I was going to struggle, and I reckon I got offered a deal with Parramatta that would have been, I think my Raiders deal would have been up around 600, and the Parramatta deal would have been somewhere around 150. So it's a pretty big gap in that. But I was happy to do that also. I was moving back home closer to mum and dad, closer to the family. And I sort of saw that as, Tigers 2.0. I was going to go back for a year and reinvent myself and have a really good year, and then we'd go again. But
and show people what you're about.
Yeah, for sure. I've always wanted to come to England to play. To be honest, I didn't think it'd be at 27. I thought it'd be a little bit older. But when the opportunity for Warrington come up, I wasn't ready to come, but I threw off a bit with my agent, and I said, if I'm going to go, I want this, this, and this. And he rang me about 3 hours later, and he said, you've got everything.
This, and this.
And I sort of
unlucky, mate.
I sort of panicked, and I rang the missus, and I said, fucking hell, they're going to give us what we want. I said, we should have pushed it a bit more, but yeah, make no mistake, Warrington, paid me a nice hefty fee to come over, and yeah, really glad that I did. I think I knew going to England, I had the potential to sort of further my career in with my links with England and Great Britain, and not many people can say that. Most come over at the back end to see Europe and do the best they can, but in the twilight of their career. So come over at that age and hopefully get some England caps and things like that. It was something that excited me.
I think it was a shock when that type of rumour comes to fruition, like you said, especially with your age and the way you've been playing. It was a big coup for the league, albeit I'm from Widnes, so Warrington's not our nicest neighbour, but it's still great for the league. And when you're hearing that, you think they can't pull that off, and then next minute you're there holding a wire jersey. And
I think everyone likes to give it to Warrington, don't they? Because they spend a bit. But I think for what Simon and that do for that club, they don't just do it for the wire. He's strengthening the competition as well, and he's spending that money to bring players over. I think he deserves a bit more credit for what that does for the sport as well as for his own club. Although it hasn't, bear too much fruit or a Super League trophy, he's certainly investing in our sport, and he deserves a big rap for that.
Right. And to be fair to him, mate, he doesn't really do bad business at all. He's just been a little bit unlucky with a few injuries, and then it's just form, mate. You can't buy form, can you? It's just got to work, and sometimes it doesn't. There's
just a big curse that comes over that club in October. I think my 3 years there, we were consistently in the top 2, 3 all year, and then we'd get to the first final and the lowest ranked team knocked us out 3 times. It's just this big weight of expectation and almost like a curse, a cloud that comes over the club, and then everyone loves to sit back and watch it, don't they? They love to see Warrington.
To be fair, I don't know what it is. It's like you said, maybe because he does try and bring a bit of attention to the sport in the country, just on behalf of Warrington.
We were consistent my whole time there. The team won a Challenge Cup, in a Challenge Cup that we should never really won, to be honest. And but just can't get it done in the right end of the season.
So just before I touch on that, mate, just a question I wanted to ask you. When the city country camps come around, mate, sorry to go backwards a little bit, how does selection work, and how did he get you there and look after you? Is it solely on you to get there, or do they logistically look after you as well?
No, they look after us, pretty well. We get a weekly fee, we get paid, and it's a really good experience. I think it's the verdict's been out recently of what sort of importance the game has, but for the young kids, getting their first taste of representative footy, getting in that environment, I think it's huge. And I think it is the closest thing to state of origin you can have. But I think in the past, it was a lot more of a genuine sort of trial to play origin. I think it's become a little bit less about that and a bit more about just taking a game to the country and letting people out there see a quality match. But, I think it's a great fixture in the calendar.
Right, so we'll go forward again to the Warrington move, mate. And when you come over at a club again, do they look after you, find somewhere for you to settle?
Yeah, it's been brilliant. We were pretty adamant we wanted to find our own house, because if you're traveling, 1,000 miles, you want to be enjoying where you live in. I think that's the most important thing, and something that I've learned. Because as I said, the sun goes down at 3-4 p.m. In the winter, so 80% of the time you're at home. Do you know what I mean? So if you're not enjoying where you live, and it can become a pretty dark place. And thankfully, I was at a great club that really looked after me, and I can't speak highly enough of my time there. I wasn't looking to leave the club at the time. It was just something the new coach coming in wasn't interested in keeping me, and really sad to not only leave the club but the town. That was our first taste of living in the UK, and if it wasn't for them, we wouldn't have fallen in love with this country, I guess. So we really enjoyed it.
So you touched on it there, albeit it may be the second to last hurdle that you've fought at, but it's still a successful year, mate. So what memories stick out? And the one thing I ask people that have made them Challenge Cup finals and stuff is, as much as you said it before, you tell the media, I'm going to wear my jersey, knowing you've half got it. Can you get rid of them cliches in that week and go, it's not just a normal week, it's the big deal? Because the Challenge Cup's got a lot of history, mate, and a lot of
I actually missed that game. I don't know if you remember, but I missed that game.
Right.
I was man of the match in the 3 Challenge Cup games leading up to that. I was in some decent form, and I had done my ankle in Catalans about 2 weeks before, so I sat in the stands and watched the boys win that. But as I said, that was a game they shouldn't have won. I think Saints were 10 or 12 points clear on the ladder, and we had Jack Hughes playing 5'8" and a few boys out of position, but one of the best games of rugby I've ever watched, and we should never have really won it, for sure.
Yeah. So you touched on an injury there, and you've been unlucky with a few, but have your injuries been just like 4 or 6 weeks here, or have you been unlucky with a couple of big ones?
No, I've had a couple of big ones, which were shoulders, but come at good times. Like I think my first year at Canberra, around 25, so that was my best year, my first year, and I done my shoulder around 25, so I only missed a week and got it patched up in the off season, and was good to go. So they've only ever been sort of short ones. That was the toughest one to take. I missed 4 weeks or 5 weeks with the ankle, but obviously in the middle of that was a Challenge Cup final. So bittersweet. Obviously, you want to see your mates win, but you're pretty disappointed you're not out there as well. But to be honest, I handled it a lot better than what I thought I would. I thought I'd be, sour grapes and wouldn't enjoy it.
So good, yeah.
But I've got some great mates at that club, and seeing them, be successful on that day. And as I said, the match was one of the highest quality matches I've ever seen, and one of the best underdog sort of matches I've seen in a long time as well. So I couldn't help but be jumping around the stands and cheering the boys on.
So do you when for a game like that, mate, you're going to miss out, do you still pipe up in reviews and team meetings and still offer advice and stuff?
Yeah, it's yes and no. I think it depends on your standing in the team, and being a half, you're well within your rights, I guess, to speak up. But truth be told, no one wants to hear from the guy that's not out there. Yeah. We had a little issue with that at Leeds this year, and although the outcome divided opinions a little bit, everyone's sort of it's sort of an unwritten law in rugby league. If you're not bleeding on the field, it's a bit hard to be saying too much. So I'm not one to talk too much if I'm not out on the field.
No, that's fair enough, mate. So again, any other standout moments from your time at Warrington? And you've had a few difficult chats in your career from being pretty young as well, mate, and you've took them all on the chin, and you've understood, like we said before, that it's more than just rugby, it's a business at that level. So you're used to them chats, but they're still difficult, Blake, aren't they?
100%, yeah. But I guess you taught from a young age that you're only as good as your last game. So what that means is when you do have them difficult chats, there'll be another game next week or next year, and you'll get to prove yourself again. And truth be told, it's probably a little easier to prove yourself when you're backed against the wall than what it is when you're already up on the mountain, I guess. So I think that's the main thing that separates the good players from the best players, is the best players can handle being at the top for longer. And although I haven't spent as long there as I'd wanted to sometimes, I'm still pleased with what I've been able to achieve so far, for sure.
Yeah. So again, the feelers are out, and Leeds step up. And was there any other interest, mate? Any interest from back home?
There wasn't really back home. I wasn't looking. I don't want to go back home. When I come here, I told myself that I'd be coming here to finish. I think if you come in here with any desire to go back home, I think England will become a lonely place for you. Like if you're watching your phone, waiting for your agent to call to tell you when you can go back home, like you've come for the wrong reasons, and then when it gets tough, it's going to be too hard for you. So I've got no interest to go back. And I met with Hulk AR at the time. That was an option. I was really impressed with Tony Smith and what he was selling about the club. And Leeds probably come in a bit late. My manager told me Catalans come in 2 weeks after I signed at Leeds. But Leeds come in for me when I was coming to Warrington. But obviously at that point, Gary Heverington v Simon Rands, it's a no contest fight, mate. It's won by knockout. So, but when I was leaving Warrington, I wanted to make sure I was at another big club, and at that point, I was ready to move over the Pennines, as they say, and coach up in Yorkshire. Yeah.
I bet it helps though that it's a consistent interest as well, isn't it? So that's like 3 years later, and they're still about offering.
Sure. And then obviously, I go there, and you want to get there and impress the South Stand. It's obviously a huge fan base, and a rugby proud city, and you go on and lose your first fucking 10 matches. I'm sitting in my lounge room, fucking nearly crying, thinking, what's going on? Everyone can see the squad we have here, and in the end, it was just sort of the harder we tried, the worse we got, and we're in a pretty dark hole there for a little bit, for sure. And life gets pretty tough when you're in moments like that.
That's I guess you see, especially being away from home, even though England's your new home now, but you see who your friends really are, I'm guessing, mate, when the tough gets going, don't you? And
do you know what? Yes and no. Like in moments like that, I don't look for other people to help me in those type of moments, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
You know what's required. You know what needs doing. Like, rugby's our job. Like, everyone's job gets tough at certain times. Yeah, sure. Other people's jobs aren't scrutinised in newspapers or forums, or you know what I mean. But at the end of the day, like, I don't really look for others to get me out of them positions. I probably could, lean on others more. That might be helpful, but it just becomes like my kids suffer, my wife suffers. You're not responding at home. You sat around and you've got 1,000 thoughts running through your head of how you're going to help the team get out of this hole. And so it's not just you, but it's everyone around you that sort of suffers as well. It's it can be a pretty dark place, for sure.
And what was the thought process initially behind a 12-month deal, Blake?
I wanted to really back myself. I'm at an age where I want to make sure I'm really enjoying my rugby. Like, I don't want to be that guy that sticks around till he's 36 just for a pay packet. Like, I'm not saying I'm near the end, but I'm closer to the end than what I am the start. So I want to keep myself feeling young and fresh, and make sure I'm getting the same thrill out of the game as what I am. And I just thought signing them 1-year deals would allow me to do that. So that was a main reasoning. Just back myself and make sure I'm still enjoying the sport.
And when did you feel the tide turned for you boys up at Leeds? When did you feel something was changing?
Well, the thing was, we knew it had to turn at some point. It couldn't continue going as bad as it was, could it? I think we had Jonesy come in. Like, I'm really thankful for Rich Agar, and he's the one that got me to the club. I didn't have too many issues with Rich. For whatever reason, the team wasn't working. I think there was some baggage from before I got there with Rich and some of the boys, but I didn't have any issues with him, and I was as confused as he was why we weren't going so well. Especially on the back of last year, they overperformed for the squads they were putting out every week. They got to within one game of the final, and so then Jonesy come, like, it just got a bit much for Rich. He was like us. He was sitting at home scratching his head and in a hole, just like we all were, and he thought it was best to walk away. And then Jonesy had a crack, and I think Jonesy galvanised the group a little bit. Jonesy done what Jonesy was good at, and that was bring the boys together. And I think we'd call that a little successful stint we had with Jonesy. I think he put some things in place, and he certainly got us to start turning the corner. And then probably some of the best business Gary's done in a while was going and finding a bloke in the Queensland Cup in Rowan, because he's come along, and it's only early, and I guess it's a bit of a honeymoon phase. But I reckon if I had a guy like Rowan earlier in my career, I think I'm a much more consistent player over a longer period, and I just really like the way he coaches. I think we see I see the game very similarly to what he does, and when you're stepping on the field knowing that, it's a pretty comfortable place.
Yeah, no, you could, don't get me wrong, I don't watch this every week, but you could see there was a definite change. There was games there where I don't want to dish you up, but you might have folded a little bit. Yeah. You're stuck in games and turned them your way rather than folded. Does that make sense, Blake? You're under the sticks, not panicking.
Well, I think
gathering.
You watch us the first 10 weeks, and no one would have described us as a resilient footy team, would they? And,
no.
By the back end, I think we got to the finals, and we were the team that no one wanted to play, and we sort of proved why. Obviously, going to Old Trafford's great, and it was a great experience, even though we lost. But it's pretty difficult to go there and not win. But I think that game's far enough behind us now that we can look back and say it was a pretty successful year in the end, and hopefully something we can build on heading into next year.
Yeah. So let's talk about that week. Like we did a little bit about the Challenge Cup, only this time you're fit and you're in the team, mate. So how's a week building up to a grand final, and how's it playing at somewhere like Old Trafford?
I've never played in a grand final in Australia, but I grew up a pretty big fan. So I was an Eels fan. So I watched them go to 2 grand finals, and the buzz around the town in Australia, it's huge. Like there's things on all week. And then we got to a grand final here, and to be honest, it was a bit of a letdown. Like there's nothing on. It's like a normal week. You train 3 times. No one's at training. There's no fans. There's no media. I don't know. It didn't feel like a grand final week. And maybe that was good in itself because there wasn't any nerves, but it didn't feel any different. And if there's one thing I think the Super League can do a bit better, it's let's build it. Like the game's at Old Trafford. Let's sell the game in Manchester all week. Do you know what I mean? Like we would get credit in that city just because our game is going to be at Old Trafford. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. The week was really disappointing, if I'm honest. I think they asked for a captain and a coach to come to a press conference like a day or 2 before the match, but other than that, it was no different than any other week. But once, like game day, and once you got to Old Trafford, and that brilliant, like awesome experience, but just not much of a build up at all. Quite bizarre, yeah.
Yeah, because the one thing when I went that final in 2015, what you get for the start, you get free public transport. Secondly, you got a ticket to Randwick races a couple of days before that. Yeah, which is like mad busy.
But they'd have fan events on all week in the city.
All week, yeah.
There'd be all the players from all the teams that have already been knocked out. They'd be all there doing coaching clinics, and there was nothing. I just found it bizarre. I don't know.
I just think, I think maybe that's where the difference is. And when people complain about currently the World Cup numbers, like New Zealand last night, we're at Wellington and it was a 4:45 or whatever. They're putting it on at 7:30 on a Sunday night.
We should take over that. We should take over Manchester for 5 days. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. It should be nothing but rugby league, shouldn't it?
Not. We'll take a bus down on game day, play our match, and we'll all head back to where we're from. Like let's take over the town. I don't know. Yeah,
because really, your hard work's done, Blake, innit? Like you might do a captain's run at like United training ground or whatever, but your hard work's done.
The hard work was done for us 8 or 9 weeks before the grand final. One thing with Rome was like, the fixtures were, as I said, thick and fast, and we had 2 or 3 days to recover, and then you were playing again. So that was one thing he taught us, that there's not actually much learning to be had on the training paddock. So don't stress yourself about that. Let's just get our bodies right and let's go again the following week. So there's not much work to be done, especially it's too late by that point. You've been playing for 26 weeks. So
that's it. You're not going to get something right there. Yeah. So the day off then, mate, in your stadium walk round, because the ground in Australia that you see on the telly aren't necessarily round 1 to 26 stadiums, are they?
No,
so,
different.
Yeah. So how do you find the bigger ground compared to your old traditional grounds? Do you prefer the newer, bigger ones, or?
Oh, if you can get a good crowd in them, you take the big one every day of the week. And I think the moment I knew we were going to a Super League grand final, the biggest my mind went straight to, like, I could just picture both teams walking out in their jackets. They do the slow walk, the flames go up, like it is what the actual game is special. It really is, and theatre of dreams, I think they call it, don't they? And
Yeah,
that's what it is. Like, so I can't fault once we're there. It's just the build up wasn't very
yeah, a bit disappointing, like you said. So if you could write a script for next year, mate, how would it go?
for us.
Yeah, I'm personally sorry.
Yeah. I think for me, I wanted the season to keep going. I sort of finally found the rhythm that I was hoping to early on, and I think if I could have found that rhythm earlier, I think my personal season, although I was happy with the way it ended, I think, if I can find that form a bit quicker next year, I think I'm in a rhythm and I'm off and running quite quick. I think when I look back at my best years, it's based off a good solid 4 or 5 weeks of just good, tough, hard footy, and then your flashy stuff comes off the back of that. So I wanted the comp to go for another 6 weeks. We had a bit of a rebirth, as you said, since Rowan come in, and I missed a couple of games there, but I was ready to keep cracking on, and the grand final probably come a bit quick for me in the end, but was happy with how I finished, and I just want to start the way I finish next year, and then I think the sky's the limit. We can go anywhere. I think some teams have bought well for next year, so it'll take some time to get a feel on the comp, but we know the formula now. There's no reason why the way we played this year can't be successful next year, and I guess it's just going to be another year of everyone chasing St Helens again, isn't it?
Thereabouts, mate, isn't it? If you stagnate, you get left behind, don't you, Blake? So everyone's got to, even Saints to that degree, mate, they've got to improve. Otherwise, Hughes catch them, Wigan catch them.
Just get some early points. I think if you can get early points, like we were spoken pretty heavily about in the preseason last year, and then when you lose 4 or 5 matches, pressure mounts.
Yeah.
So if we can just get on the board early and accumulate a few wins, it can go a long way in the season.
Yeah, it's a habit, mate. Both sides of the result, isn't it? You lose into habit, win into habit. Yeah. So we overlooked your international rep stuff, mate, didn't we, a little bit then? So how did playing for England come about? Who reached out to who, and how did you think of the Nines and the World Cup and stuff? How did you find all that?
I thought it was a good concept, the Nines. I went to the Nines a little bit underdone. I was coming off a knee injury, but I didn't want to pull out of the Nines because I didn't want to hurt my chances of going on the GB tour the week later. So I put my hand up.
Was that a discussion, sorry? So did they say, we'll use this as a bit of a fitness?
No. So there wasn't much talk. I was in the squad and I'd been training to continue on, but there wasn't really any talk about who, because some players went just for the Nines and then came home. Some went for the Nines and the GB tour, and some went just for the GB tour. So it was all pretty secretive right up until like a few days before we're leaving. But I wasn't going to play in the Nines, and then someone pulled out. And Kev Sinfield said, "Do you want to go?" And I said, "Yeah, I'll go." And even up until that point, I didn't know whether I was on the Great Britain tour after it, because we all stayed on after. But
so it was very last minute, mate. Yeah,
it was. Yeah, it was.
Right.
But really proud. Like I got to look at my nan and say, like, I'm on this field because of you. And she's someone that done a hell of a lot for me. And look, I fully understand that. Yeah, maybe it meant a little bit more to a kid that's lived here his whole life, and I understand that. But I was certainly really proud, and I had my reasons to be really proud, and I'll never apologise for that, for sure.
Yeah, and no matter what level you're playing at, mate, you don't put a jersey on to get beat, do you?
No, not at all. Like it's, and then as it panned out, like I played, I think we cut out because it's an hour, is it?
No, we're good to go, mate, if you're good to go.
One sec, mine's gone. I can't see you anymore.
Right, I can see. Are you back on now, or?
I can see me, but not you. If you can see me, I can.
Yeah, it's not a bad thing you can't see me, to be fair,
okay,
mate.
cool.
Yeah, because you played wing one day, didn't you?
What's that?
You played on the wing one game as well, didn't you?
Yeah, I did. And, obviously, that's all anyone wants to speak about. Everyone's got their opinions on that. And
Oh, I didn't get at it for that, mate. Sorry, it was just the way you were highly utilised.
No, I was just, but not from what I was just saying that like people speak like it was my fault I was on the wing. Like I got asked to play on the wing. I think by that stage of the tour, it was out of me and Lachlan Coote. Coote's played a bit of fullback, so he'd be better under the high ball. But, wingers' jobs these days are to come in and have 20 carries and run into the meat of their pack. So I was pretty confident that I was going to be better suited for that. I just don't like people speak about it like it was my fault. Like, if I had been given a chance in the halves, maybe I play different and play better and, everyone's happy for me to be a GB international then. But look, I'll finish my career with 2 Great Britain caps, and that's something I'll be proud of, and that jersey will hang with pride in my pool room for many years to come. I'm really
if that girl lets you have it back, mate.
Absolutely.
I think that's brilliant. That's tickled me. That. Right, mate. So I appreciate I took a lot of your time up. So a couple of daft questions for you.
No worries.
So any pre-match superstitions?
I've had heaps in the past. I've got less now. Some of mine at Canberra, I used to have a banana sandwich an hour and 20 minutes before the match. So I used to have my team manager run around looking for 2 slices of bread for me. I put wax in my hair a couple of 40 minutes before we run out, things like that. Chewing gum. At Canberra, I used to run out for warm up, and I really don't like warm up. So about 5 minutes later, I used to run in and go to the toilet and take as long as I could to come back and miss as much as a warm up as I can. But I used
Good
to
rugby now, stat mate. Good rugby brain.
I used to run back in at the same time every week, and Ricky used to lose his head. He'd be like, "What the fuck is this bloke doing? Get him out!"
Just reserving energy, being clever, mate.
Yeah, that's right. I do this thing where I look at myself in the mirror before kickoff. So I'm sort of that far in the zone. I don't really care, but you see your teammates out of the corner of the eye walk past, looking at you weird for staring at yourself in the mirror. But I don't have as many anymore. I'm getting older, so it's less about luck and a bit more about preparation now.
Yeah. So toughest player you played with and against? The definition of tough's very different, Blake, for everyone, admit it.
Yeah. I'm going to say Josh Papali for both. I've had to defend against him, and I've played with him. So he's a guy that when he's on your team, like you watch him train every week, and he's not the hardest trainer. He'll always keep going, but he's always closer to the back than the front. But you put him on the pitch, and he'll have 25 carries and 45 tackles, and he won't stop for 80 minutes. So he'd be mine for sure.
Yeah, I can imagine that doesn't matter then, mate, on the training days when he's producing what he produces.
I played with Nigel Plum at Panthers too. He was a tough bugger. He was held together with strap and tape, and could pull a shot off. But
he's got a few reels, hasn't he? Yeah. Right, mate. So your favourite away ground?
I'm going to say Hull FC. I've scored a few tries on that ground. I seem to score a few every time I go there, so I like that one. And it's a nice surface as well. Yeah.
So if you were out for a few beers with the boys, mate, or you and the missus are out and you've had a few and you find a mic end up in your hand, what are you giving us?
I'm going wagon wheel Darius Rucker.
I can't say I know it, but I'll take your word for it, mate.
You have to have a look. You have to have a look.
Yeah. Right. I understand if you don't want to, if you're still playing and the amount of players you've been around. But if you be able to name a 1 to 13 that you played with, that'd be great. If not, I understand, mate.
Played with. I can mention some of the players I played with. They'd be in there. Yeah. So at Panthers, my debut game, I had Petro Sivanasiva, so he'd be a prop. Yeah. Luke Lewis was always a hero of mine because he's from where I'm from, and I always looked up to him. I got to debut alongside him. Trent Waterhouse was there then as well. Then Papa at Canberra. Jordan Rapana, a winger.
Yeah.
Jared Croker, the centre, Mr. Reliable. At the Tigers, Robbie Farah, hooker.
Yeah.
Pat Richards, another winger, another good one.
Yeah.
I've got to play for a lot of good ones. Warrington, had some good ones as well. At Leeds, Ryan Atkins at Warrington.
Yeah.
So a few. Benny Westwood. I've got to get Benny Westwood in there. Super Benny. So yeah, I've had the pleasure to play with a lot of quality players.